Hello everyone. So I was requested by one of you to be able to discuss with you the nervous system and how it, because it's an integral part of psychology. So I will try to do it to the best of my knowledge because I have a medical background. Yes. So when you talk of the nervous system, it's a broad term, but the nervous system is divided into two. It's divided into the central and the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have the peripheral nervous system. Basically, peripheral to mean that any other nerve that is found outside the central nervous system, nerves coming from the spinal cord to supply muscles and glands and other areas of the body, are coming from the either spinal cord or nerves that are coming from the brain. We have nerves that come from the brain, and they're normally like 12 nerves coming from the brain. They will also fall under the peripheral nervous system because now they are supplying body parts away from the brain itself. So first, before we go, we expand that subject, we will try and talk about the neuron. So the neuron is the basic unit of the nervous system. A neuron is like a single nerve cell, and normally a neuron will receive and send signals to other neurons. So it has parts that are adapted to doing that. It has a cell body, it has a dendrite, and it has an axon. An axon is the part where the signal is transmitted through. It's like a pathway. And then the dendrites are like um, like a point where two neurons actually interact. So dendrites have things like have surfaces like, let me show you a diagram. So dendrites have these extensions. You can see these extensions. They are basically to increase the surface area by which they can be able to interact with the the nerve signals that will be transmitted to it from another nerve cell. This is an axon terminal. It also has this axon terminal. You can see it also has these projections. These projections will be connecting to a dendrite of another nerve cell. But there is a dendrite here. It will also connect to an axon of another nerve cell. So dendrites have to actually receive signals from other cells. And the reason why these ones, they have these projections, extensive projections, is just to receive, to increase the surface area so that any single signal that comes across it, it can be able to receive it. Yeah. Now we have the cell body. The cell body actually is where the functions of the cells are controlled. Like the metabolism of this nerve cell will happen in this cell body, and it also has the nucleus. Now the nucleus controls the entire neuron, because now the nucleus is where DNA is formed, DNA is synthesized, and now from DNA synthesis we can progress and be able to form things like proteins and everything. The cell body is covered by a cell membrane. A cell membrane, as usual, normally just protects the cell. Now, this neuron has an axon. Like I said, it's where the signals are transmitted. Now, if I wanted to transmit a signal from my body, from an organ, from a muscle to the spinal cord, it will transmit it through this axon. The axon is lined by something that we call a myelin sheath. The myelin sheath simply covers the axon so that we are not able to lose the signals. If it wasn't covered, we will be losing the signal. So the myelin sheath is actually synthesized by something we call a Schwann cell. It's called a Schwann cell if it's in the peripheral nervous system. But if it's within the central nervous system, it's called an oligodendrocyte. So oligodendrocytes will synthesize myelin if it's within the central nervous system. Central nervous system to mean it's within the brain or the spinal cord. But now a Schwann cell is outside of the central nervous system. Peripheral nerves depend on the production of myelin sheath by Schwann cells. Yeah. Now we have the axon is actually not something that is so continuous. We have these points that are called nodes of Ranvier. This is where ions diffuse. We have to have sodium, potassium entering the cell and sodium leaving the cell so that you maintain something that we call a membrane potential. The reason why we have these spaces is so that neurons actually for the neuron to be able to transfer information through this axon, it has to be so fast, and we don't want it to be continuous. We want it to be able to jump and jump, and actually the way it transmits signals through this myelin sheath, it's called saltatory conduction. It jumps from one cell to another. It's not something continuous, but it jumps so that it can be able to transmit a signal very fast. And you'll understand that a neuron actually has to be so fast, so much that if at all you placed your hand in a sufuria that was very hot, the signal will already be transmitted to your brain or to your spinal cord, so that the information that will be sent back is so that you are able to remove your hand from the hot sufuria. You can only be able to do it that fast if the neuron transmitted the information that fast. So you can imagine the rate at which it actually, the speed or the velocity at which it actually does that is actually very high. So that's basically the neuron. Let's see what. So neurons are divided into three. Neurons are divided into three. We have the sensory nerve and sensory neurons, and we have the motor neurons, and we also have connector neurons. Sensory neurons are normally found in organs. Now, like in your hands, we have things that will sense that the sufuria is, for example, hot. We have, like, your eyes can be able to detect that I can be able to see something. I can see the light. Your ears can be able to have neurons that will be able to pick the hearing, like something was conducted, sound was conducted to your ears, light was conducted to your eyes. So the sensation, we have to have neurons that will be able to pick the sensation. They're also called afferent neurons. They pick the sensation and send it to the central nervous system. The central nervous system, either your spinal cord or your brain. Once the information has been conducted to the central nervous system has to send back the plan that it has. That information has been processed by the central nervous system, and the central nervous system has a plan for you. The plan will be transmitted back through the motor neurons to that organ. For instance, the plan will be transmitted to, if I was touching a hot sufuria, the plan will be transmitted back so that your hand to the muscle, so that your hand is able to remove remove your hand, your muscles are able to remove your hand from the hot sufuria. Yeah, I hope up to there you've understood. That is how these neurons function. For instance, if you are scared, if you notice, probably you saw a lion or something that was scary, or probably a dog. The fact that you've seen it, your eyes have sensed it. Or probably you've heard a dog barking, your ears have heard it. That's the sensation. Now that information is transmitted to your brain, and your brain processes the information and has to give you a way forward. This way forward may include you deciding to run. Information will be sent to your muscles to start running, to start flexing and extending the muscles at a very high rate so that you run. Information may be transmitted to your sweat glands, your sweat, so that you are able to produce a sweat. It's a reaction. Yeah. So, apart from sensory neurons and motor neurons, we have connector neurons. Connector neurons are found within the spinal cord and the brain. They basically connect They are simply interneurons. They are connecting. They are found majorly within the spinal cord and the brain. I think one of the connector neurons, I think we can say, is corpus callosum. They simply connect two brain regions. I think one of them would be something like corpus callosum. Corpus callosum simply connects the two hemispheres of the brain. Yeah, that's basically how I can put it. So we are done with the nerve cell and the three types of the neurons. Now we'll go to peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system, like I said, is anything beyond the central nervous system, anything that is not the brain and anything that is not the spinal cord. So the nerves that are going to or they are coming from the brain, we normally have nerves that come from the brain. Now, like the nerves that one of them would be like the optic nerve. Optic nerve is the nerve that supplies your the eyes. Others will be like olfactory. Olfactory supplies your nose. It senses the sensation of you smelling something and sends it to the brain. We also have things like trigeminal nerve that supplies your face. And also nerves, they are also the ones that supply the muscles of your face, and you're able to smile, you're able to open your mouth and eat. We have facial nerves. Facial nerves are the ones that supply the muscles of the face. So much that if you had a patient with, for example, stroke, you'll notice that if you found stroke patients, the muscles of their face normally have some element of deviation because now the nerves are affected. Now, like facial nerve is affected. We have nerves that, other nerves that come from the brain include the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the one that supplies you're able to talk. It supplies your intestines. Your intestines are able to undergo peristalsis so that you can propel food out of your stomach. Yeah. Your vagus nerve supplies your heart so much that if your vagus nerve has issues, your heart rate can actually be really slowed down. It's the one that slows down your heart rate. Yeah. Others are nerves that innervate your tongue, hypoglossal nerve, those ones. They come from the brain itself, and then they come and supply these muscles and your tongue. They supply your eyes and your nose so that you're able to pick signals and send them back. And we also have your spinal cord. Now your spinal cord normally comes from normally is carried within your back, just a bit from your around the neck up down to where you meet your waist. The spinal cord runs down. So there are normally nerves that come out of your spinal cord to supply your body. They come out and supply your muscles, all the muscles of your body. Some of them come out and supply your intestines. Intestines are supplied by nerves, actually. Let me show you a diagram. Let me just try and find a diagram for the spinal cord, so that you are able to see the nerves coming out from it. You can be able to see the nerves. Let me open one diagram so that you're able to see. There are so many nerves coming from your spinal cord. Now, those many nerves that are coming from your spinal cord are what we call they are part of the peripheral nervous system. But the spinal cord itself is part of the central nervous system. I hope it loads faster. I hope I'm not complicating everything or making things harder. Yeah, but you can see now you can be able to see this is like from around the neck. There are nerves coming out, and these nerves have the roots. And now they are covered by, these are bones. we have like these are vertebral bones covering the spinal cord so that it's not injured. And you can see these are nerves. We call them brachial plexus. These ones supply your arms mostly. These ones here. These ones supply your part of your neck, and this phrenic nerve here supplies the diaphragm so that the diaphragm is able to move. So much that when this place is injured, you'll notice that your diaphragm will be paralyzed. We have thoracic nerves, and some of these nerves they're coming down. Lumbar plexus, these ones supply the lower part of your body. You're able to move with your legs. These ones now like genitofemoral nerve, and these ones supply the groin, the areas around the sexual organs and everything. These ones supply the skin. Latecutaneous supplies the skin around the thigh, upper part of the thigh. Femoral nerve comes down. Femoral nerve is one of the reasons it supplies muscles that will make you be able to actually bend your knee. And we have sacral plexus. This pudendal nerve is the one that supplies the lower part of your the area around the anus. You're able to go to the toilet. You're able to experience, let's say, pain, labor pains and everything. These ones come around there. This one sciatic nerve will be supplying the area behind your leg, so that you can be able to extend your legs. Sciatic nerve, yeah. So I'm just showing you this so that I show you that these are nerves that are coming from the spinal cord. The spinal cord ends here. The remaining bits are just nerves. Yeah. So these nerves will fall under peripheral nervous system. There are also nerves that come from the brain. Let me show you that also. Nerves that come from the brain, we call them cranial nerves. They will fall under peripheral nervous system. I hope it loads faster so that you understand these are part of peripheral nerves. These are nerves that are coming from the brain to supply areas that are far away from the brain. I hope you are able to see this. You can see there is cranial nerve 1, cranial nerve 2. Cranial nerve 1 supplies your nose. It comes from your nose. It picks sensations of smell. And number 2 is the optic nerve, picks sensations of, let's say, light, and you can see images in your eye. Trochlear nerve supplies how your eye muscles are able to move laterally. If you can move your eyes laterally, that's like trochlear nerve. Oculomotor also supplies how your muscles are able to move up, medially, medially to mean towards your nose. Your eye can actually move towards your nose, and that one will be done by oculomotor. Abducent, your eyes will be able to move laterally. Trochlear, number 4, you'll be able to move your eyes superiorly. Trigeminal supplies the sensations of your face. If you can sense things from your face, it's nerve 5 and all those. And like you can see the way I was saying, the vagus nerve will be supplying your heart, lungs, your gastrointestinal tract, and every other thing listed here. If you can be able to shrug your shoulders, you can see these muscles are supplying the shoulder here. We call them accessory muscle. If you can shrug your shoulder, it means this muscle is okay. Yeah. So these are nerves that come from the brain itself and supply mostly the face, and the longest is actually vagus. Yeah. So those ones are peripheral nerves. So now we've talked about the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Now the peripheral nervous system is divided into two. Somatic. Soma means body. Like you saw, the part of a neuron is also called body. Soma means body. So now somatic to mean that these are Now, this is part of the nervous system that directs the movement of your skeletal muscles, which are usually under our voluntary control. And then autonomic are more of they do not really depend on you. It's they are beyond our control. How your heart rate functions, maybe you are scared. If your heart rate decides to beat faster, that's not within your control. When you decide to sweat, you cannot decide to sweat. You cannot decide to breathe. These are things that you cannot be determined by you. So the autonomic nervous system maintains the homeostasis, the balance that is within your body. It regulates glands. It regulates like sweat glands. It regulates your saliva. Like you can be able to produce saliva. That's beyond your control. Unless now there is something that is happening within your body that limits this, then now you'll realize that, oh, the saliva is not being produced adequately. And then now so somatic majorly like the nerves I was showing you from the spinal cord, majorly they supply the muscles, skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are the muscles that control how you move around. Yeah, so those ones are so somatic nervous system is beyond your control. That one is controlled by the skeleton, by it's like the nerves that supply the skeletal muscles. Then autonomic nervous system is the one that is beyond your control. You can't control it. Now this autonomic nervous system is what is divided into two: sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So, sympathetic nervous system, it's normally mediated by the adrenaline. When you think of sympathetic nervous system, you think of adrenaline rush. And adrenaline rush is normally beyond your control. If you saw a lion today, how you'll behave, how your heart will function, that's beyond your control. If you produce sweat, that's beyond your control. So now, the sympathetic nervous system is something that makes your body active. We call it flight and fright. Flight mode, you want to run, you want to fly, you are frightened, you want to be angry. I hope you understand. Your heart wants to pump blood faster so that you are able to supply the muscles and the organs very fast so that you run. Your eyes will actually be, we call it mydriasis. Your pupil, the pupil of your eye widens so that it can see the thing very well, so that you can actually run. I'm trying to explain it so that you understand. So your eyes will be widened. That's mydriasis. You will start you will start having a very high heart rate. The heart rate will be very high, and even your breathing will be actually somehow increased. And the pressure normally increases. So think about something that increases your pressure. That's sympathetic nervous system. And now when you talk about the parasympathetic, you think of somebody who is relaxed, somebody whose heart is very slowed. Like I said, the vagus nerve mediates the parasympathetic. It slows your heart rate. And now parasympathetic is when you have issues with your parasympathetic. Now if your parasympathetic is activated, you will actually sweat a lot. You will produce a lot of saliva. You will urinate on yourself. You will poop on yourself. That's what parasympathetic does. It will slow your heart rate. You will just be slowed. Your blood pressure will be very, very low. Now the enzymes within your body, now like your digestive system will produce a lot of enzymes. It will be activated to produce a lot of enzymes. Now that's parasympathetic when it's activated. Now when you eat food, the parasympathetic system is what makes you produce a lot of juices so that you can mediate the digestion. Yeah, so this is a relaxed person eating, sweating, yeah. But now sympathetic, it comes up with you are frightened, you want to run, things have to be active. Your heart rate has to go up. Yeah. So they tend to work in opposition, and they regulate the functioning of organs such as the heart, intestines, and the lungs. So now parasympathetic is in a relaxed state. It's dominant. It's an unstressful physical and mental state. Slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, dilates arteries, increases digestive and eliminative processes. It performs bodily maintenance. So that's autonomic nervous system divided into two, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The other thing was somatic nervous system. So that's how the peripheral nervous system is divided into somatic and autonomic nervous system. So like I said, sympathetic nervous system is an emergency system so that it works when you are under stress, mental and physical strain. So your blood pressure will be increased, respiration will be increased, your heart rate will be increased, and several hormones will have to be released into your bloodstream. Now these hormones, when they are released into your bloodstream, they come from glands. I know you've studied something about a bit of endocrine system. Hormones have to be released. Examples of hormones that are released, we have adrenaline, noradrenaline. They're also called epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are the other terms. Adrenaline is also called epinephrine. Noradrenaline is also called norepinephrine. So these ones are released, and they are the ones that increase your blood pressure. They're the ones that increase your heart rate. Yeah. So, like in other words, like it's written here, it prepares the body to fight or to flee. Prepares your body to fight or to flee from whatever is causing the stress or anxiety. Yeah. Now, I was trying to highlight this so that you're able to see it. So, when you feel tense and anxious, when you take a very important examination or being interviewed for a job, the sympathetic nervous system is the one that would be responsible for such feelings. So when that crisis is settled and you feel like I'm relaxed, now that's parasympathetic division. So this was the how it's divided. Peripheral nervous systems, it's all nerves going to and from the CNS. The somatic, it's divided into somatic and autonomic. Autonomic, it's beyond you, it's automatic. Voluntary, it's how your muscles, you can decide to walk or you can refuse. That's not within that's within your control, but you can't decide if you want to sweat or not. So now the other thing was that now these are the actions. The way I was saying now, I was just trying to describe it so that you're able to understand it in a simpler way. Yeah, now parasympathetic, the function, and the sympathetic. This is the body organ. Now for the pupil, like I was saying, you've seen something, you want to really see it nicely, so your eyes will dilate. That's sympathetic, so that you actually run. The pupil dilates. In this case, it constricts. Yeah, this is the parasympathetic is more of the laziness, how lazy you can get. So now, like your blood vessels dilate in sympathetic. They should actually be constricting, and the heart rate increases in speed. The lungs will open so that you breathe very fast, and the hair. When you talk about the hair erects. You remember your hair has to erect so that you try and maintain. You try and maintain warmth. Yeah, but here in this case, it relaxes. It relaxes. Yeah. So and then in sweat glands will open so that you are able to sweat in sympathetic. Contractions, sympathetic reduces contraction, but here you are relaxed, you can be able to eat. So the contractions are increased in parasympathetic. The bladder, in sympathetic, it will relax. But in parasympathetic, you want to urinate. You want to urinate. So the bladder has to contract so that it can produce urine. Urine can flow out through the urethra. Yeah, in a reproductive system is excited by the sympathetic. Yes. You remember when I think this was done in biology for those who did biology. When your hair was erecting, it was trying to conserve heat so that heat can be able to accumulate between the hair. But when it lies down, you want to lose that heat. So in short, the function of the parasympathetic nervous system is to quiet the body and bring it to a lower level of arousal, whereas the function of the sympathetic nervous system is to generally activate the body. So this is now the central nervous system. We want to talk about the central nervous system. So as we said, it's majorly the spinal and the cranial and the brain, the spinal cord and the brain. So now the spinal cord it's part of the nervous system. It's found within the spinal column. Like I was showing you the bones within the bones located in your back, they normally cover the spinal cord. And normally the spinal cord also relays information to the brain. They are columns. They're normally columns that transmit information from the spinal cord to the brain. These are complicated things. It's like when your body receives information. Let's say your hand has received an information, sends it to the spinal cord. Let's say you are burning, and then the spinal cord has something we call columns. Columns are ascending. We have ascending columns and descending columns. Ascending will send information to the brain. Brain will send it back to the spinal cord using the descending column. Now, we have something we call a reflex. A reflex, sometimes when you hit your knee, there's a way we normally hit a knee using the patella hammer. We call it a knee jerk. Let me show you a diagram so that you see how we do it for your understanding. Yeah, so you can be able, if you can be able to see this, these are things that happen within the spinal cord. Yeah, now this is a knee jerk. You hit the knee at the patella. There's a bone that is normally here in front of your knee. When you hit the knee, the information is transmitted to the spinal cord. And faster, the information comes back through the motor neuron. First, it's going through the sensory neuron, sensory nerve afferent, to the spinal cord. Then it comes back through the motor neuron. It's normally so fast that when you hit it, the leg just moves forward. It doesn't take really long. So that's like nini. We call that a knee jerk. It's a simple reflex. Yeah, and then now the spinal cord has two major components, not just the spinal cord, but even the brain. We have gray matter and we have the white matter. Now the gray matter is what contains the cell bodies. Let me show you the gray matter and the white matter of the spinal cord. You see the way this spinal cord is. This is the spinal cord. The gray matter here. This is where the spinal the cell bodies are. Then this is the white matter. You can see it's like white. Yeah. Let me show you a better diagram. And that is also found in your brain. Okay. You can see the white matter is the white bit. The white matter basically, now the nerves are coming out from the spinal cord. This is the gray matter. And now this is the white matter. The nerves are coming from this gray matter. Once they come out, they are like, this is the cell body. The cell bodies have accumulated here. As they come out, now they become white matter. Now white matter is majorly consist of axons. Axons were the ones that were relaying, conducting the signal out of the brain or out of the spinal cord. I hope you've understood. For the brain, let me show you for the brain how the gray matter looks like. Gray matter and white matter of the brain. For ones, you can be able to see. Yeah, now the white matter is this. It's actually white, and then gray is the other bit. This is actually your brain. It's like the coronal section of your brain. Let me see if I can get another better diagram so that you can be able to visualize these things. Um, yeah, you can be able to see this. This is the gray matter. It outlines the outer bit. It consists of the bodies. And then now inside, these are the axons. We call them the white matter. So in the brain, the outermost part of the brain, that is the gray matter. But in the spinal cord, you notice that the gray matter was the part that was inside. Yes, I hope you've understood that bit. So in the spinal cord, the white matter is the outer layer. And in the brain, the white matter is actually it's actually the inner part. So within the white matter, now axons are what we find in the white matter. They transmit information to and from the brain. So now when they are damaged, when now like a section of the spinal cord is damaged, obviously the part that is damaged will not function normally, and you'll find that a person is paralyzed. Sometimes when people have injuries to their back and there is a side of the spinal cord that is damaged, you realize that they really get paralyzed. You can also realize that they can lose sensation on some parts of their legs. There are things they may not be able to do. Maybe they won't be able to sense pain. They won't be able to sense things like, let's say, vibration or temperature changes. Yeah. Now, that in that case, there is a part of their spinal cord that is probably damaged. Now we go to the brain. Now the brain, of course, it's housed in the cranium. It's found in your head. The brain has parts. So it has the cerebral cortex or the cerebrum. This cerebrum, it's actually the main part of the brain. And then after you have the brain, which consists of the cerebrum, below the cerebrum, we have a place called the cerebellum. And then now we have the brain stem. It's called the brain stem, not the brain system, brain stem. Let me find a better diagram, or let me just use what you have here. So, this part, this place that is colored is the cerebrum. It's actually the biggest bit of your brain, and it has so many functions. Then you have cerebellum here. It is a bit that is a bit lower than your brain. So it's housed in we call it posterior cranial fossa. Posterior cranial fossa houses this bit, including the brainstem. The brainstem is here. The brainstem has what we call the pons. You'll find the pons here. You'll find something called the medulla oblongata somewhere here, and the midbrain is here. And it continues down now to be the spinal cord. So you can actually see that it's connected. Let me show you a diagram of the brainstem. So you can see it consists of the midbrain, pons, and the medulla oblongata. Let me get a diagram. That's what we call a brainstem. I hope this won't take long. I don't want to make a very long video. I hope it will be shorter. So this is the best, I think. Let me choose this. I don't know which one to choose. Let me choose this. You can be able to see we have pons, we have medulla oblongata, and then we have continuation of the spinal cord. That is what we call the brainstem. It continues down. The brainstem. Yes, it continues down to be the spinal cord, and then you can see the cerebellum here. This is a sagittal section. We call it a sagittal section. It's half the brain, and then I want you to notice this whitish thing that is found here. It's called the corpus callosum. Of course, it has parts which I won't mention. So this corpus callosum is white matter that connects to the cerebral cortex. This is half of the brain, and then there's the other half. It has to be connected so that there is coordination between these two parts of the brain. So it's called the corpus callosum. It's an example of, I would say it's an example of an interneuron. We said there are three types of nerve cells: sensory, motor, and interneurons or connexons. So I would say it's like a connection. It connects the two parts of the brain so that when they are coordinating things or doing things, they do it in synchrony. Yeah, so that's the brain stem. So now let's I hope we are going to the functions. Let me just describe this part of the brain. Now the brain, like you can see, is divided into several parts. You see where this blue thing is ending, and then when you're going in front, it's called frontal lobe. Frontal lobe. And then behind it, we have what we call the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is divided into two. You can see there is something dividing the parietal lobe into two, this side and this side. Behind the parietal lobe, we have the occipital lobe. And then down on both sides, we have what we call the temporal lobe on this side and the other side. So the frontal lobe majorly controls your behavior. If somebody had a stroke on this side, they'll actually start abusing you. And you'll be wondering what's wrong with this person, what's wrong with this patient. They speak things that you start wondering, why are they speaking these things? That's frontal lobe, measures on your behavior. The frontal lobe has this thing we call the primary motor cortex. Motor cortex is where every movement is determined from. If you want to move your hand up, it's determined from here. This also means that when your mouth wants to speak, that motor bit of your mouth speaking is controlled from the frontal lobe at the primary motor cortex, a place called the Broca's area. It's normally somewhere here. I want you to see that so that you need to know that the Broca's area, it's a place that controls the motor bit of how you will talk. The way you are talking, if you're able to move your mouth and actually talk, that motor, by motor we mean the movement, it's controlled by the frontal lobe, Broca's area. You need to know that. On to, if I need to continue discussing about speech, let me mention Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area is found in the temporal lobe. Also, the auditory cortex, Wernicke's area, is the part that controls how you understand that speech. It's found somewhere here. We call this superior temporal gyrus. It's found here. It controls your understanding. So for instance, if you want to know somebody has an issue with their motor area, you'll know it by they are able to speak the right thing. They can actually speak the right thing, but they are not able to. They have issues with You can see they have what we call maybe dysarthria. That communication is not really coming out clearly. It's let's say they're not able to articulate it nicely. But if you want to see somebody has an issue in the temporal lobe, the sensory area of the speech understanding, it's called Wernicke's area. They are speaking things nicely, but things are confused. A confused conversation. Me go toilet, me go, things like that. But here somebody will be speaking something that is clear, Broca's area, but now it's the right thing, the right comprehension, the right language, the right but now they're not able to articulate it clearly. You'll think they are probably drunk or something. Temporal lobe also has the auditory. Auditory cortex means the place where we hear from, the one that processes information from hearing. It's found in the temporal lobe. Occipital lobe has what we call what controls your eyesight. It's found in the occipital lobe. Yes. And then the parietal lobe, this is central sulcus, separates the primary motor cortex from the somatosensory. All sensation is controlled by the parietal lobe using this primary somatosensory cortex. To an extent that if this was damaged, if you have a stroke in your parietal lobe, you have what we call you don't feel one part of your body. Sensation can be lost in one part of your body if you have an issue with your parietal lobe. Yeah. So cerebellum normally is a place that somehow refines movement that is processed here. If you find people with cerebellum issues, you find somebody walking now like drunkards, the way they walk with their feet wide apart. Have you ever tried walking down the stairs and you realize you missed a staircase? Now that coordination that you're trying to do there, that one is mediated by your cerebellum. When you miss a staircase and you feel like I just missed something, and you still maintain yourself, now that's cerebellum. The fact that you can close your eyes and you can close your eyes and still maintain your balance, that's mediated by cerebellum. If your cerebellum had issues and I closed your eyes, you would not be able to maintain that good posture. You'll actually stagger. If you can be able to clap, there's a way you can clap very fast and beat your hand both sides. You beat one of your, let's say you are beating your left hand with the dorsum of the other, and then you turn it this other side this way. That's mediated by cerebellum. Those funny things. If you can be able to put a finger in front of you and put it touch your nose and touch that finger, touch your nose and then touch the finger that is ahead of you, all those things are mediated by the cerebellum. Yeah, I think I've explained that clearly. Yeah. So now we were talking about cerebral cortex is the largest structure of the brain, accounts for more than 70% of the neurons in the CNS, composed of two hemispheres, and I said they are connected by what we call the corpus callosum. Yeah. Because now the two sides control the opposite sides of the body. Now, for example, the left side of your brain is controlled by the right side, and the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body. If I had a stroke on my right side of the brain, the left side is what will be paralyzed. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the 4 areas or lobes according to the general functions. So we have frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes, like I've explained. I'll just continue using this so that at least you don't miss anything. So the frontal lobe, we said it has the Broca's area. The motor control area for speech is called the Broca's area. And then the other parts mediate your emotions, not really your mental operations, your psychological functions, how your thoughts, perceptions, frontal lobe mediate that. Then the parietal lobes, like we said, bodily sensations. You remember when I was saying that when we have things that we call ascending columns. Any information that comes from your spinal cord goes to the motor area of your brain. That information, that sensation has to go through the thalamus. It has to go through the parietal lobes, and that the parietal lobe is what had the sensory, the somatosensory area. You remember? So all the sensations will go there. Touch, pain, pressure, they channel to the parietal lobes, and they are located behind the frontal lobes. You remember I showed you that. Then occipital lobes are located at the back of the brain. They control vision. All the vision's perceptions have to go to the occipital lobe. And you realize that when normally somebody hits your eyes, somebody hits your back, your eyes will see stars. Yeah. Because that's where your vision is controlled from. And then we have temporal lobes, and like we said, the major function is auditory perception. How you hear. If you don't hear something well, you won't understand it. And I also said it also controls the Wernicke's. It has the Wernicke's area. Now Wernicke's is where we understand what was said. We understand the language. Yeah, the sensation bit of language. The motor bit where you want to speak is found in the frontal lobe. It also mediates some emotional control. But the main thing, remember, auditory and Wernicke's area is found in the temporal lobe. And then we have these places that are called the limbic systems. Somewhere within my conversation, you had me talk about the thalamus and everything. Now, the limbic system, these are found in the center of the brain. Let me show you where these things are located. In the center, they include corpus callosum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. These structures. Let me show you where they are, so that at least you have a good idea. They're actually down below the brain. Thalamus, hypothalamus. Yeah. You can be able to see. Let me get a good diagram. Can be able to see this. It's not coming out clearly. It's not so clear. I don't know if you can see this. Let me get a better image. This is taking long. Yeah, so you can see, I want to show you this thing so that at least I'll even show you the pituitary. So now, this is the corpus callosum. You may remember I mentioned corpus callosum connects the two parts, the two brain hemispheres. We have two hemispheres, the right and the left. It connects them. Below the corpus, we have the thalamus. Thalamus is this point. And now below the thalamus, that's why it's called hypothalamus. Hypo means down. We have the hypothalamus. And then below the hypothalamus, we have the pituitary. And you remember when, I don't know if you've gone through this, that hypothalamus normally secretes certain hormones in the endocrine pathway that go and enter the pituitary system. So you can see hypothalamus is above the pituitary. Actually, a pituitary has two lobes. We have the anterior and the posterior lobe. The posterior lobe gets its hormones directly from hypothalamus. Things like vasopressin. Vasopressin is the antidiuretic hormone. It comes directly from the hypothalamus. And the oxytocin, what you normally hear commonly as oxytocin, the ones that bond the mother and the baby, comes directly from the hypothalamus to the pituitary, the posterior pituitary. And now we also have other hormones that stimulate the pituitary to release hormones. Let me talk about it because now we'll be going to the endocrine system. And this one will include now like the corticotropin releasing hormone. This one will stimulate the pituitary. It's released from the hypothalamus, stimulate the pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, so that this one will stimulate the adrenal gland. I know in part of your notes you had something called the adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex. So it will stimulate the adrenal cortex to stimulate something we call cortisol. That's an example. The other thing is the thyroid gland. Now, for example, the hypothalamus will release thyroid releasing hormone, thyroid stimulating releasing hormone. It will go to the pituitary so that the pituitary will release thyroid stimulating hormone. Then the pituitary will stimulate the thyroid to release the thyroxine hormones and we call them T3, T4, the thyroxine hormones, the thyroid hormones released directly from the thyroid. So you can see this diagram. These ones are called the limbic system, the corpus callosum, the thalamus, and the hypothalamus. So the corpus callosum, I talked about it, connects the cerebral hemispheres. If it's damaged, of course, the two brains will function independent of each other, a condition known as split brain. So you'll sense every side senses its own sensation. If you have an issue with this side, the other side will not see, things like those ones. The thalamus it serves as the major sensory relay center for the brain. Every sensory system has to send information to the thalamus, then it's processed. Yeah, it processes that information. At the moment it has processed that information, it will know if this information should go to the cerebellum or should it go to the cerebrum? Should it go to the cortex, the somatosensory relay center in the brain? You know the one that was there, the major sensory center in the brain. It will know whether to send that information to whichever area. Yeah. And also, it's important in learning and memory. We normally have, we call them spinothalamic columns. Now, this one transmit information from the spinal cord to the thalamus, where it's processed. And now the thalamus thinks, should I send this to which organ? Which organ should I send this information to? Should I send it to the cerebellum so that the cerebellum coordinates that? Yeah, something of the sort. Then we have hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is that part that used to mediate, actually it mediates most homeostasis things. It controls your temperature things, controls issues to do with sugar, salt, and hormones and chemicals. You remember the temperature, the way it used to control temperature. There's a way it will set a set point. And it's like let me try and make it seem simple. Normally there is a osmolality, like there is the concentration of ions within your body, within the blood. Let me say within your blood. There's a concentration of ions within a cell, within the fluid that is outside the cell. So now, for instance, if the sugar levels within your body are a bit high, and the blood will pass through the hypothalamus and it senses that. Now, for instance, it will send the signal to your pancreas to release insulin so that insulin can reduce the amount of sugar in your blood. That's one example. And now insulin will regulate that by making your cell take up a lot of maybe glucose so that within the circulation it's reduced. You remember also, I think this one you learned in biology. If the temperature was very hot, if the temperature is very hot, that one will be sensed with in a way it gets sensed by the hypothalamus, so that now the hypothalamus sends the information to your let's say to your body, to your skin, and now your skin can be able to know if it should sweat a lot. Should I sweat a lot so that I cool down? Should the hairs be able to the hair will lie down so that it doesn't conserve heat, it's lost, things like that. The hypothalamus also controls a bit of your sexual response, rage, anger, actually eating. There are things, the controlling eating and drinking by using so many hormones, it actually controls that. And through the other hormones like leptin, stimulate production of leptin and things like that. Yeah. So there was a diagram here having the hypothalamus and the thalamus and the pituitary and then amygdala and the hippocampus and things like that. So the limbic system comprises the hypothalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, septum parts of the thalamus, and frontal and temporal lobes. The limbic system now controls so many emotions. Emotions are controlled from the limbic system. If you are in rage and pleasure, all kinds of pleasure, arousals, controlled by the limbic system. The cerebellum is located at the base of the brain. It regulates posture, maintenance of balance when walking, riding, sitting. All the muscular coordination is controlled by the cerebellum. You remember I talked about that. So it will coordinate them and maybe make them smooth or something. Then we have this brainstem. The brainstem has the pons, medulla, and the reticular activating system. The pons, this is where your respiration is actually controlled. We normally call these places the heart center, respiratory center. They are up there in where we call the brainstem, the midbrain there, brainstem, pons, medulla. They are found there. Medulla, located at the bottom of the brain and at the top of the spinal cord, controls automatic body functions, breathing, heartbeat, swallowing. So when you injure your brainstem, you are likely, actually, even strokes to the brainstem, you can't control your heart rate and you can't control your respiratory rate, and those are the things that maintain your body functions. So injury, especially to the brainstem, is really terrible. We normally say somebody is brain dead when now that person can be pulled out of maybe ICU, because now when they are brain dead, when you notice that these functions, breathing, the heartbeat, they are not actually doing so well, and now you can say the patient is brain dead when the brain stem is not functioning. There are of course tests that will be able to assess if the brain stem is okay or not. Yeah. Reticular activating system. It's a reticular formation. Uh, Reticular formation. It normally filters incoming information. Also responsible for alertness and wakefulness. Determines sleep. So if it's damaged, you can be able to go into a coma that will resemble sleep. Yeah, reticular activating system controls your sleep mostly. Now let's go to the endocrine system. I hope this one will be fast. Endocrine system, basically it's about the glands that secrete hormones or chemicals that are released into your bloodstream, so that these things work together. Now let's say, like I mentioned, if the nervous system is under fright, you are scared, the endocrine system is stimulated to produce hormones. Let's say your adrenal medulla, it will produce things like hormone, adrenaline or adrenaline, which will stimulate your sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system it will increase the blood pressure. These hormones will increase the blood pressure and heart rate, and now you are able to if these hormones are increased, now you are able to supply the muscles that we need to run and everything like that when the pressure is very high. Yeah. So nervous system activates endocrine system to secrete hormones which are passed into the bloodstream, which circulates them throughout the body. So these hormones, these glands, we have pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, gonads, and the pancreas. I think these are the basic ones: pituitary, thyroid, and adrenal, gonads, and the pancreas. Those ones are the basic ones. Pituitary gland, we talked about it. I showed you in the image. It's just below the hypothalamus. Yeah, it's located at the base of the brain. And one of the major hormones produced is the growth hormone. Uh, of course, it produces many hormones, but now growth hormone mediates growth. If it's produced in excessive amounts, now like in patients who have pituitary tumors, you'll notice that they have gigantism. And if you have very little amount of the same, you end up being a dwarf. Other glands, like it also mediates, like the way I talked about, it produces things like thyroid stimulating hormone, it will stimulate the thyroid. Produces things like adrenocorticotropic hormone, which will stimulate the adrenal glands to produce, let's say, cortisol. And it also produces let's say ADH, we call it antidiuretic hormone. Yeah. And then gonads, it produces, remember, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormones are produced from the pituitary to stimulate the gonads, either the ovary or either the testes, to produce the necessary hormones, either estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And then normally it functions under the control of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus has to produce other things that will be poured into the pituitary for pituitary to stimulate these other organs. I also mentioned that, remember. And in women, hypothalamus, you remember, pituitary will produce what we call, there's this thing called prolactin. Prolactin will be produced by the pituitary, so that your breast can be able to produce milk in women especially. Yes, and then we have thyroid gland. It has hormones, thyroxine hormone. This one normally controls the metabolic rate of your body, your heart rate and everything. Now, for instance, if the thyroid gland is producing a lot of thyroxine hormone, you end up with what we call hyperthyroidism. You find a person whose heart rate is very fast. When they stand next to as a jiko, when they stand next to the jiko, they feel a lot of heat and they sweat a lot, and the metabolism is very high, so much that they lose a lot of weight, so they end up being thin. They're normally tensed. They are tense, they are anxious. These are anxious people, very anxious actually. And their intestines are very active. They can end up with diarrhea. They can even vomit actually. Those are hyperthyroid patients, and their blood pressure is very high, and the heart rate is very fast. That we sometimes we call it atrial fibrillation, up to 300, and your heart rate is supposed to be like maximum 100. Yeah, so you can imagine. Now for hypothyroidism, these are patients who are slowed down. Their level of activity is reduced, they are sleepy, they are like depressed. You can actually sometimes the best way, the first way you pick a depressed hypothyroidism patients is they present to the psychiatrist with depression. Yeah, so they have constipation, meaning they're not able to pass through because the system is slowed down. They are sleepy, they are slow, and they're not losing a lot. They are retaining weight, so they are overweight. In children born with actually children born with reduced in hypothyroidism, we call it congenital hypothyroidism. They have mental retardation mostly. Deficiency of iodine normally produces what we call goiter, because now your thyroid is trying to compensate, so it swells. Adrenal gland, we mentioned this, it's divided into two. We have the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla produces adrenaline, produces things like it's where things like dopamine, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. Other words are epinephrine or epinephrine are produced, and these ones normally help in sympathetic nervous system, the emergencies, increasing heart rate and increasing sugars. Yes, and they control aggression to some extent. The emotional behaviors such as crying and aggression controlled by the adrenal medulla. The hormones produced by the adrenal medulla. Adrenal cortex is divided into three, and I don't want you to know this, but normally it's called zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. Glomerulosa produces what we call mineralocorticoids. Now, like we call them aldosterone. Aldosterone is what controls, mediates the sodium and water. If the pressure is very low in your body, it will stimulate absorptions of a lot of sodium, and sodium, water normally follows sodium. Yeah. So that's adrenal cortex. And now adrenal cortex also produces corticoids through in the zona fasciculata. Zona fasciculata is the one that produces cortisol. If you are under stress, you'll produce a lot of cortisol, a lot of it. Yeah. And cortisol normally increases your sugar. Sometimes you hear people are under stress and their sugar is very high. You notice that they get high blood sugar because of stress. And then the zona reticularis is the part where your hormones, sex hormones, especially testosterone and these other things, majorly are produced. Yeah. So the gonads, we talked about the gonads. The gonads majorly testes, ovaries. So they produce gametes, sperms, and ovum, and they play a critical role in your sexual behavior. Now, like let's say, if your ovaries are not producing estrogen, you'll not be able to have proper breast development and pubic hair, and of course things like ovulation. You'll end up with infertility, primary infertility, because your ovaries are not okay. And hormone produced by the testes is testosterone, which influences your sex drive. Yeah. Let's go to the pancreas. Pancreas produces several other hormones, but of course, the one that they've mentioned here is insulin. You can remember they also produce glucagon. Insulin reduces sugar, glucagon increases sugar. And Now I think I'm done. That's basically what I was told to cover. Yes. So in conclusion, you have seen how behavior and personality, among other body functions, are tied to the flow of hormones in the blood, which are produced by the endocrine system. Yes, I think I've covered the majority of things. Yeah. The rest, I think, it's majorly psychology for you to understand. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. I hope it has helped. If you have any issues and any concerns, just raise them up with me, so you can I can be able to I can be able to actually try and explain further or expound on whichever point you didn't understand. Yeah. Thank you very much for being patient. I hope the video is not so long.